Hello everyone, and welcome back to the continuation of Anne of Green Gables. I believe today we are starting with chapter 13, The Delights of Anticipation. It's time Anne was in to do her sewing, said Marilia, glancing at the clock, then out of the yellow August afternoon where everything drowsed in the heat. She stayed playing with Diana more than half an hour more than I gave her leave to, and now she's perched out there on the woodpile talking to Matthew, 19 to the dozen, when she knows perfectly well she ought to be at her work. And of course he's listening to her like a perfect ninny. I never saw such an infatuated man. The more she talks and the odder the things she says, the more he's delighted, evidently. Anne Shirley, you come right in here this minute. Do you hear me? A series of staccato taps on the west window brought Anne flying in from the yard, eyes shining, cheeks faintly flushed, with pink, unbraided hair streaming down behind her in a torrent of brightness. "Oh, Marilia," she exclaimed breathlessly, "there's going to be a Sunday school picnic next week, in Mr. Harmon Andrews' field, right near the lake of shining waters, and Mrs. Superintendent Bell and Mrs. Rachel Lynde are going to make ice cream. Think of it, Marilia, ice cream. And oh, Marilia, can I go to it?" "Just look at the clock, if you please, Anne. What time did I tell you to come in?" 2 o'clock. But isn't it splendid about the picnic, Marilia? Please, can I go? I've never been to a picnic. I've dreamed of picnics, but I've never. Yes, I told you to come at 2 o'clock, and it's 2:45. I'd like to know why you didn't obey me, Anne. Why, I meant to, Marilia, as much as could be, but you have no idea how fascinating Idlewild is. And then, of course, I had to tell Matthew about the picnic. Matthew was such a sympathetic listener. Please, can I go? You'll have to learn to resist the fascination of idle whatever you call it. When I tell you to come in at a certain time, I mean that time and not a half an hour later. And you needn't stop to discourse with the sympathetic listeners on your way either. As for the picnic, of course you can go. You're a Sunday school scholar, and it's not likely I refuse to let you go when all the other little girls are going. But, faltered Anne, Diana says that everybody must take a basket of things to eat. I can't cook, as you know, Marilia, and I don't mind going to a picnic without puffed sleeves so much, but I'd feel terribly humiliated if I had to go without a basket. It's been preying on my mind ever since Diana told me. Well, it needn't prey any longer. I'll bake you a basket. Oh, you dear good Marilia. Oh, you are so kind to me. Oh, I'm so much obliged to you. Getting through with her O's, Anne cast herself into Marilia's arms and rapturously kissed her shallow cheek. It was the first time in her whole life that childish lips had voluntarily touched Marilia's face. Again, that sudden sensation of startling sweetness thrilled her. She was secretly vastly pleased at Anne's impulsive caress, which was probably the reason why she said brusquely, There. Never mind your kissing nonsense. I'd sooner see you doing strictly as you're told. As for cooking, I mean to begin giving you lessons in that some of these days. But you're so featherbrained, Anne. I've been waiting to see if you'd sober down a little and learn to be steady before I begin. You've got to keep your wits about you in cooking and not stop in the middle of things to let your thoughts rove all over creation. Now, get out your patchwork and have your square done before tea time." "I do not like patchwork," said Anne dolefully, hunting out her work basket and sitting down before a little heap of red and white diamonds with a sigh. "I think some things with sewings would be nice, but there's no scope for the imagination in patchwork. It's just one little seam after another, and you never seem to be getting anywhere. But of course, I'd rather be Anne of Green Gables sewing patchwork than Anne of any other place with nothing to do but play. I wish time went as quick sewing patches as it does when I'm playing with Deanna, though. Oh, we did have such elegant times, Marilia. I have to furnish most of the imagination, but I'm well able to do that. Diana is simply perfect in every other way. You know that little piece of land across the brook that runs up between our farm and Mr. Barry's? It belongs to Mr. William Bell, and right in the corner there's a little ring of white birch trees, the most romantic spot, Marilia. Diana and I have our playhouse there. We call it Idlewild. Isn't that a poetical name? I assure you it took me some time to think it out. I stayed awake nearly a whole night before I invented it. Then, just as I was dropping off to sleep, it came in like an inspiration. Diana was enraptured when she heard it. We got our house fixed up elegantly. You must come see it, Marilia, won't you? We have great big stones all covered with moss for seats, and boards from trees to trees for shelves. And we have all of our dishes on them. Of course, they're all broken, but it's the easiest thing in the world to imagine that they're whole. There's a piece of plate with a spray of red and yellow ivy on it that is especially beautiful. We keep it in the parlor, and we have the fairy glass there too. The fairy glass is as lovely as a dream. Diana found it in the woods behind their chicken house. It's all full of rainbows, just little young rainbows that haven't fully grown big yet. And Diana's mother told her it was broken off a hanging lamp they once had. It's nice to imagine that fairies lost it one night when they had a ball, so we call it the fairy glass. Matthew is going to make us a table. Oh, we have named that little round pool over in Mr. Barry's field Willowmere. I got that name out of a book Diana lent me. That was a thrilling book, Marilia. The heroine had 5 lovers. I'd be satisfied with one, wouldn't you? She was very handsome, and she went through great tribulations. She could faint as easy as anything. I'd love to be able to faint, wouldn't you, Marilia? It's so romantic. But I'm really very healthy, for all I'm so thin. I believe I'm getting fatter, though. Don't you think I am? I look at my elbows every morning when I get up to see if any dimples are coming. Nana is having a new dress made with elbow sleeves. She is going to wear it to the picnic. Oh, I do hope it will be fine next Wednesday. I don't feel that I could endure the disappointment if anything happened to prevent me from going to the picnic. I suppose I'd live through it, but I'm certain it would be a lifelong sorrow. It wouldn't matter if I got to 100 picnics in after years. It wouldn't make up for missing this one. You're going to have boats on the Lake of Shining Waters, and ice cream, as I told you. I've never tasted ice cream. Diana tried to explain what it was like, but I guess ice cream is one of those things that are beyond imagination. And you have talked even on for 10 minutes by the clock, said Marilia. Now, just for curiosity's sake, see if you can hold your tongue for the same length of time. Anne held her tongue as desired, but for the rest of the week she talked picnic and thought picnic and dreamed picnic. On Saturday it rained, as she worked herself in such a frantic state lest it should keep on raining until and over Wednesday that Marilia made her sew an extra patchwork square by way of steadying her nerves. On Sunday, Anne confided to Marilia on the way home from church that she grew actually cold all over with excitement when the minister announced the picnic for the pulpit. Such a thrill as went up and down my back, Marilia. I don't think I've ever really believed until then that there was honestly going to be a picnic. I couldn't help fearing I'd only imagined it, but when a minister says a thing in the pulpit, you just have to believe it. You set your heart too much on things, Anne, said Marilia with a sigh. I'm afraid there'll be a great many disappointments in store for you through life. Oh, Marilia, looking forward to things is half the pleasure of them, exclaimed Anne. You mayn't get the things themselves, but nothing can prevent you from having the fun of looking forward to them. Mrs. Linda says, Blessed are those who expect nothing, for they shall not be disappointed. But I think it would be worse to expect nothing than to be disappointed. Marilia wore her amethyst brooch to church that day as usual. Marilia always wore her amethyst brooch to church. She would have thought it rather sacrilegious to leave it off, as bad as forgetting her Bible or her collection dime. That amethyst brooch was Marilia's most treasured possession. A seafaring uncle had given it to her mother, who in turn had bequeathed it to Marilia. It was an old-fashioned oval containing a braid of her mother's hair, surrounded by a border of very fine amethyst. Marilia knew too little about the precious stones to realize how fine the amethysts actually were, but she thought them very beautiful and was always pleasantly conscious of their violet shimmer at her throat, above her good brown satin dress, even although she could not see it. Anne had been smitten with delighted admiration when she first saw the brooch. Oh, Marilia, it's a perfectly elegant brooch. I don't know how you could pay attention to the sermon or prayers when you have it on. I couldn't, I know. I think amethysts are just sweet. They are what I used to think diamonds were long ago, before I had ever seen a diamond. I read about them, and I tried to imagine what they would be like. I thought they would be lovely glimmering purple stones. When I saw a real diamond in a lady's ring one day, I was so disappointed I cried. Of course, it was very lovely, but it wasn't my idea of a diamond. Will you let me hold your brooch for 1 minute, Marilia? Do you think amethysts can be the souls of good violets? Chapter 14. Anne's confession. On the Monday evening before the picnic, Marilia came down from her room with a troubled face. Anne, she said to the small personage who was shelling peas by the spotless table and singing Nellie of the Hazel Dell, with a vigor and expression that did credit to Diana's teaching. Did you see anything of my amethyst brooch? I thought I stuck it in my pincushion when I came home from church yesterday evening, but I can't find it anywhere. I saw it this afternoon when you were away at the Aid Society, said Lan, a little slowly. I was passing your door when I saw it on the cushion, so I went in to look at it. Did you touch it? said Marilia sternly. Yes, admitted Anne. I took it up and pinned it on my breast just to see how it would look. You had no business doing anything of the sort. It's very wrong in a little girl to meddle. You shouldn't have gone into my room in the first place, and you shouldn't have touched a brooch that didn't belong to you in the second. Where did you put it? Oh, I put it back on the bureau. I hadn't on in a minute. True, I didn't mean to meddle, Marilia. I didn't think about it being wrong to go in and try on the brooch, but I see now that it was, and I'll never do it again. That's one good thing about me. I never do the same naughty thing twice. You didn't put it back, said Marilia. That brooch isn't anywhere on the bureau. You've taken it out or something, Anne. I did put it back, said Anne quickly. Pertly, Marilia thought. I just don't remember whether I stuck it on the pincushion or laid it in the china tray. But I'm perfectly certain I put it back. I'll go and have another look, said Marilia, determining to be just. If you put that brooch back, it's all there still. If there isn't, I'll know you didn't, that's all. Marilia went to her room and made a thorough search, not only over the bureau, but in every other place she thought the brooch might possibly be. It was not to be found, and she returned to the kitchen. Anne, the brooch is gone. By your own admission, you were the last person to handle it. Now, what have you done with it? Tell me the truth at once. Did you take it out and lose it? No, I didn't, said Anne solemnly, meeting Marilia's angry gaze squarely. I never took the brooch out of your room, and that is the truth. If I was to be led to the block for it, although I'm not very certain what a block is. So there, Marilia. Anne's "so there" was only intended to emphasize her assertion, but Marilia took it as a display of defiance. I believe you are telling me a falsehood, Anne, she said sharply. I know you are. There now, don't say anything more unless you're prepared to tell the whole truth. Go to your room and stay there until you're ready to confess. Will I take the peas with me? Said Anne meekly. No, I'll finish shelling them myself. Do as I bid you. When Anne had gone, Marilia went about her evening tasks in a very disturbed state of mind. She was worried about her valuable brooch. What if Anne had lost it? How wicked of a child to deny having taken it, when anybody could see she must have. With such an innocent face, too. I don't know what I wouldn't sooner have had happen, thought Marilia as she nervously shelled the peas. Of course, I don't suppose she meant to steal it or anything like that. She's just taken it to play with or help along the imagination of hers. She must have taken it, that's clear, for there hasn't been a soul in that room since she was in it. By her own story, until I went up tonight. And the brooch is gone. There's nothing sure. I suppose she has lost it and is afraid to own up for it for fear she'll be punished. It's a dreadful thing to think she tells falsehoods. It's a far worse thing than her fit of temper. It's a fearful responsibility to have a child in your house you can't trust. Slyness and untruthfulness, that's what she has displayed. I declare I feel worse about that than the brooch. If only she had told the truth about it, and I wouldn't have minded so much. Marilia went to her room at intervals all through the evening and searched for the brooch, without finding it. A bedtime visit to the East Gable produced no result. Anne persisted in denying that she knew anything about the brooch, but Marilia was only the more firmly convinced that she did. She told Matthew the story the next morning. Matthew was confused and puzzled. He could not so quickly lose faith in Anne, but he had to admit that circumstances were against her. You sure it hasn't fell down behind the bureau? Was the only suggestion he could offer. I moved the bureau, and I've taken out the drawers, and I've looked in every crack and cranny, was Marilia's positive answer. The brooch is gone, and that child has taken it and lied about it. That's the plain, ugly truth, Matthew Cuthbert, and we might as well look it in the face. Well, What are you going to do about it? Matthew asked forlornly, feeling secretly thankful that Marilia and not he had to deal with the situation. He felt no desire to put his oar in this time. She'll stay in her room until she confesses, said Marilia grimly, remembering the success of this method in the former case. Then we'll see. Perhaps we'll be able to find the brooch if she'll tell me where she took it. But in any case, she'll have to be severely punished, Matthew. Well, now, you'll have to punish her, said Matthew, reaching for his hat. I have nothing to do with it, remember. You warned me off yourself. Marilia felt deserted by everyone. She did not even go to Mrs. Linda for advice. She went up to the east gable with a serious face and left it with a face more still serious. Anne steadfastly refused to confess. She persisted in asserting that she had not taken the brooch. The child had evidently been crying, and Marilia felt a pang of pity, which she sternly repressed. By night she was, as she expressed, beat out. You'll stay in this room until you confess, Anne. You can make up your mind to that, she said firmly. But the picnic is tomorrow, Marilia, cried Anne. You won't keep me from going to that, will you? You'll just let me out for the afternoon, won't you? Then I'll stay here as long as you like afterwards cheerfully, but I must go to the picnic. You'll not go to the picnic nor anywhere else until you've confessed, Anne. Oh, Marilia, gasped Anne. But Marilia had gone out and shut the door. Wednesday morning dawned as bright and fair as if expressly made to order for the picnic. Birds sang around Green Gables. The Madonna lilies in the garden sent out whiffs of perfumes that entered in on the viewless winds at every door and window, and wandered through the halls and rooms like spirits of benediction. The birches in the hollow waved joyful hands as if watching for Anne's usual morning greeting from the east gable. But Anne was not at her window. When Marilia took her breakfast up, she still found the child sitting primarily on her pale and resolute, with tight shut lips and gleaming eyes. Marilia, I'm ready to confess. Marilia laid down her tray. Once again, her method had succeeded, but her success was very bitter to hear. Let me hear what you have to say, Anne. I took the amethyst brooch, said Anne, as if repeating a lesson she had learned. I took it just as you said. I didn't mean to take it when I went in, but it did look so beautiful, Marilia. When it was pinned on my breast, I was overcome by an irresistible temptation. I imagined how perfectly thrilling it would be to take it to Idlewild and play I was Lady Cordelia Fitzgerald. It would be so much easier to imagine I was Lady Cordelia if I had a real amethyst brooch on. Diana and I make necklaces of roseberries, but what are roseberries compared to amethyst? So I took the brooch. I thought I could put it back before you came home. I went all the way around the road to the link out the time. When I was going over the bridge across the Lake of Shining Waters, I took the brooch off to have another look. Oh, how it did shine in the sunlight. And then, as I was leaning over the bridge, it just slipped through my fingers, so... and went down, 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 all properly sparkling and sank forever beneath the Lake of Shining Waters. And that's the best I can do at confessing, Marilia. Marilia felt hot anger surge up into her heart. This child had taken and lost her treasured amethyst brooch and now sat there calmly reciting the details thereof without the least apparent compunction or repentance. Anne, this is terrible, she said, trying to speak calmly. You're the very wickedest girl I've ever heard of. Yes, I suppose I am, agreed Anne tranquilly, and I know I'll have to be punished. It'll be your duty to punish me, Marilia. Won't you please get it over with right off, because I would like to go to the picnic with nothing on my mind. Picnic indeed. You'll go to no picnic today, Anne Shirley. That shall be your punishment, and it isn't half severe enough either for what you've done. Not go to the picnic, Anne sprang to her feet and clutched Marilia's hand. But you promised me I might. Oh, Marilia, I must go to the picnic. That was why I confessed. Punish me in any way you like, but that. Oh, Marilia, please let me go to the picnic. Think of the ice cream. For anything you know, I may never have a chance to taste ice cream again. Marilia disengaged Anne's clingy hands stonily. You needn't plead, Anne. You're not going to the picnic, and that's final. No, not a word. Anne realized that Marilia was not to be moved. She clasped her hands together, giving a piercing shriek, and then flung herself face forward on the bed, crying and withering in utter abandonment of disappointment and despair. For the land's sake, gasped Marilia, hastening from the room, I believe that child is crazy. No child in her senses would behave as she does. If she isn't, she is utterly bad. Oh dear, I'm afraid Rachel was right from the first. but I put my hands to the plow and I won't look back. That was a dismal morning. Marilia worked fiercely and scrubbed the porch floor and the dairy shelves when she could find nothing else to do. Neither the shelves nor the porch needed it, but Marilia did. Then she went out and raked the yard. When dinner was ready, she went upstairs and called to Anne. A tear-stained face appeared, looking tragically over the banister. "Come down to your dinner, Anne." "I don't want any dinner, Marilia," she said sobbingly. "I couldn't eat anything. My heart is broken." "You'll feel remorse of conscience some day, I expect, for breaking it, Marilia, but I forgive you. Remember when the time comes that I forgive you. But please don't ask me to eat anything, especially boiled pork and greens." Boiled pork and greens are so unromantic when one is in affliction. Exasperated, Marilia returned to the kitchen and poured out her tale of woe to Matthew, who, between his sense of justice and his unlawful sympathetic with Anne, was a miserable man. "Well, now, she shouldn't have taken the brooch, Marilia, or told Sores about it," he admitted mournfully, surveying his plate full of unromantic pork and greens as if he, like Anne, thought it bit of food unsuited to the crisis of feeling. "But she's such a little thing, such an interesting thing. Don't you think it's pretty rough not to let her to go to the picnic when she's so set on it?" "Matthew Cutmer, I'm amazed at you. I think I've let her off entirely too easy. If she doesn't appear to realize how wicked she's been at all, that's what worries me most. If she'd feel sorry, it wouldn't be so bad, and you don't seem to realize it, neither. You're making excuses for her all the time to yourself. I can see that." "Well, now, she's such a little thing," feebly reiterated Matthew. "And there should be allowances made, Marilia. You know she's never had any bringing up." "Well, she's having it now," retorted Marilia. That retort silenced Matthew if it did not convince him. That dinner was a very dismal meal. The only cheerful thing about it was Jerry Boat, the hired boy, and Marilia resented his cheerfulness as a personal insult. When the dishes were washed and her bread sponge set and her hens fed, Marilia remembered that she had noticed a small rent in her best black lace shawl when she had taken it off on Monday afternoon on returning from the Ladies' Aid. She would go mend it. The shawl was in a box in her trunk. As Marilia lifted it out, the sunlight, falling through the veins that clustered thickly about the window, struck upon something caught in the shawl, something that glittered and sparkled in the faucet of violet light. Marilia snatched at it with a gasp. It was the amethyst brooch, hanging to a thread of the lace by its catch. "Dear life and heart," said Marilia blankly. "What does this mean? Here's my brooch safe and sound, that I thought was at the bottom of Barry's pond. Whatever did that girl mean by saying she took it and lost it? I believe Green Gables is bewitched. I remember now that when I took off my shawl Monday afternoon, I laid it on the bureau for a minute. I suppose the brooch got caught in it somehow. Well." Marilia betook herself to the east gable, brooch in hand. Anne had cried herself out and was sitting dejectedly by the window. "Aunt Shirley," said Marilia solemnly, "I've just found my brooch hanging my black lace shawl. Now, I want to know what that rigmarole you told me this morning meant." "Why, you said you'd keep me here until I confessed," returned Anne wearily. "And so I decided to confess, but I was bound to get to the picnic. I thought out a confession last night after I went to bed and made it as interesting as I could. And I said it over and over so that I wouldn't forget it, but you wouldn't let me go to the picnic after all, so all my trouble was wasted." Marilia had to laugh in spite of herself, but her conscience pricked her. "Anne, you do beat all, but I was wrong. I see that now. I shouldn't have doubted your word when I'd never known you to tell a story. Of course, it wasn't right for you to confess to a thing you hadn't done. It was very wrong to do, but I drove you to it. So if you forgive me, Anne, I'll forgive you, and we'll start square again. And now get yourself ready for the picnic." Anne flew up like a rocket. "Oh, Marilia, isn't it too late?" "No, it's only 2 o'clock. There won't be more than well gathered yet, and it'll be an hour before they have tea. Wash your face and comb your hair and put on your gingham. I'll fill a basket for you. There's plenty of stuff baked in the house, and I'll get Jerry to hitch you to the sorrel and drive you down to the picnic ground." "Oh, Marilia," exclaimed Anne, flying to the washstand. "5 minutes ago I was miserable. I was wishing I'd never been born, and now I wouldn't trade places with an angel. That night, a thoroughly happy, completely tired out Anne returned to Green Gables in a state of affection impossible to describe. Oh, Marilia, I've had a perfectly scrumptious time. Scrumptious is a new word I learned today. I heard Mary Alice Bell use it. Isn't it very expressive? Everything was lovely. We had a splendid tea, and then Mr. Harmon Andrews took us all for a row on the Lake of Shining Waters. 6 of us at a time. And Jane Andrews nearly fell overboard. She was leaning out to pick water lilies, and if Mr. Andrews hadn't caught her by her sash just in the nick of time, she had fallen in and probably be drowned. I wish it had been me. It would have been such a romantic experience to have been nearly drowned. It would be such a thrilling tale. And we had the ice cream. Words fail me to describe the ice cream, Aurelia. I assure you, it was so sublime. That evening, Marlene took the whole story to Matthew over to her stocking basket. I'm willing to own up to that I made a mistake, she concluded candidly, but I've learned a lesson. I have to laugh when I think of Anne's confession, although I suppose I shouldn't, for it really was a falsehood. But it doesn't seem as bad as the other would have been, somehow, and anyhow, I'm responsible for it. That child is hard to understand in some respects, but I believe she'll turn out all right yet. And that's one thing certain. No house will ever be dull that she's in. Alright, next we will start with chapter 15, A Tempest in the School Teapot. Ooh, that sounds very interesting. But, thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed this, don't forget to like and subscribe. And you can also check out my other socials below to stay up to date. And thank you so much. Have a good night and good day. Goodbye. Mwah.